until, of course, the third day. But first, can I just say, with more delay, what anger simply must convey, that please, for the love of, in the name, and oh holy, may God damn and curse forever and ever, you wretched corporate boardroom parasites. That's one thing that you writhe and wring and squeeze the very life and soul out of a person, and for the less than double-digit dollars of minimum wage. And it's one thing that, though my position was only part-time, 6 to 11A, 5 hours a day, Monday through Friday, 25 hours a week, yet in order to obtain it, I had to agree, and only under condition that I comply, to keep open my daily schedule until 3 afternoon regardless anyway, in case the coat warehouse should unto a later time on any given day need me to stay, potentially jeopardizing on any given day any other shitty employment that I should manage to procure for myself, or else in position to must needs slip away, despite being told to stay, and so risk cutting off as but my right leg instead of, and so not to lose, the left to which I left, or otherwise to forfeit, unoccupied, full half of the business hours of any given workday, untethered in compliance until 3, that even if one should possibly somehow find somewhere else complimentary, that if one should possibly somehow find somewhere else complimentary shift between 3 and 11 p, it comes at the cost of sleep lost prior to the next shitty coat warehouse shift, early in the morning of the very next day. And it's one thing, too, that this vocational shit stew is served up for my nauseous, gagging ingestion by some gross goblin who but years ago staggered in, some filthy migrant, yet prospered not because of her industrious person, but because she and every alien her type are all invertebrate, and for an extra $2 an hour can be paid to daily piss on someone else's abuelos, and they're proud to wear the frowning face and bear the fang that enforces this modern financial enslavement and this newest economic hardship, so making only worse the place to which they came to make better their own lives. But to then subject so meager an employment position unto such disgruntled, condescending dunce, unto such mean-tempered, morbidly obese, giant bat monstrosity as the Hispanic underling directly subordinate to my new boss at the Oswego Coat Warehouse, that, you reprehensible scumbags, that is an egregious malevolence, such as tantamount to crimes against humanity, and is warranting Holy Inquisition for its sick merit. For that in such atrocity you sow the calamity of this curse against you, and may you reap it. I bring her up, though, the fat bat at the coat warehouse, who's without sonar, but whose great girth shows up on the radar, the rumble wonder of grounded thunder, not because I seek compensation for damages suffered through sight, an injury like horrors which I cannot unsee, that for 2 shifts and to start the third, Big Fat, the fruit bat, she was crammed into yoga pants spandex that were always, and but for the extra stress of her any next small squatter bend, about to burst, perpetually on the verge of catastrophic failure. And the woven integrity of which polyester textile was stretched so far beyond reasonable snugness that, no matter which angle of her it was which faced you, whether she stood her side view in front of you, beholding her from behind, or confronted head-on by her stifled, unrespirated moose knuckle, one was forced to behold her flabby, pale flesh behind, as it were, the scarce veil and privacy of but a screen door. I mention her, though, because she was a large factor in my resignation just 37 minutes into my third workday. That is, she was acutely, or, well, rather, she was grossly influential, I guess, by best pragmatic, and not just that she was a factor who happens to be large. I say influential because, admittedly, had things not first become distinctly and suspiciously and suddenly sour with the pretty senorita, and immediately when I picked her up that Wednesday morning, and for no obvious reason, then it's possible that I wouldn't have quit when Fat Bat gave me shit not long thereafter. Just so, unto though, before the coat warehouse opens for business, the first hours of every morning shift are spent in the back of the property, out of sight to the rest of the store, all the associates together, tired, solitary, quiet, heavy, lagging in labor, dim, of dark despairing too, one cohesive, stifled unit, one sorry, motley morning crew, one composite, somber solemn, a shared regretful, longing portrait, a sad, bleak, remorseful ponder, like lives which long ago were through, lives which hoping never knew, except for me and Bonita Senorita, of course, because we are beautiful, and so retain the optimism of biology, and the implicit aspiration of happenstance, that, at any given moment, upon but windfall turn, happiness in the aesthetic of another is always, potentially, only a random encounter, an introduction away. But anyway, everyone's in the back in the mornings, tearing open and sorting the contents of scores of cardboard boxes, which are hauled in 2 each morning by daily freighters. The boxes each contain any number, unto infinite combinations of individual items, merchandise of all types and trademarks offered at the large retailer, which pass between franchise locations in some subtle variation of economic subterfuge, serving logistics for some grand paramilitary scheme for supremacy. The merchandise in the cardboard boxes is dispersed between a dozen or so large rolling bins, some of which are vaguely labeled, some lacking label altogether. Once all the boxes are emptied and their contents divided, the bins are then rolled out into their correspondent aisles, and the stuff inside the bins becomes inventory on the shelves. After 2 mornings, and by half an hour into the third, my memory had not yet mastered the sortation of each unique among scores of distinct items, and I twice had to appeal to Fat Bat for direction. This, of course, proved hugely annoying, inspiring, provoking instant ire in the creature, who so, after my second request, saw fit to give me shit instead of merely answering it. About the pretty co-worker, though, the lovely young Latina of my brief escort. As I was saying, I drove her home Monday, pick her up and drive her home Tuesday, the coat warehouse, both days having kept me extra for the full day, as though just so that I might give the young lady those rides, as she was hired full-time and while mine was merely part. Yet so I take her home on Tuesday and things are good. More than good. Too good, in fact. And I knew it all along and never trusted it. She sought toward my presence at our little opportune during twice the daily pattern, as much as I might cite my loiter toward her, and wandered my way throughout the day, if when we workers at little moments would idle away. In conversation I hardly had to talk. I let her talk, and by the time we parted Tuesday we were quickly become comfortable in what quiet little company we shared together, that for the blunt, drastic departure in affinity, and over the difference of but 15 hours, I'm certain that the detachment was decided about, and not by her. The next day, Wednesday, when I picked her up, and without hardly greeting, we drove in silence. Her face in her phone the whole way over. Before then, as I pulled in and parked my car in front of our workplace, she let me know that she would not require a ride home that afternoon, or furthermore, that her father henceforth would provide her transport, and as soon as the car was stopped, but before its engine was off or even shifted into park, she exited the car and made directly towards the entrance to the store, but specifically not to walk with me. The stark, severe change of our dynamic, while it was immediately perplexing, even disconcerting, yet it wasn't entirely unexpected. Its timing was just abrupt. Notwithstanding, I was suddenly none too keen on sticking around and keeping the position any longer to see what bullshit they might be trying to pull. Still, I very much needed the job, and so didn't simply leave right then and there, once the young lady proved prophetic, the prudence of my prior skepticism, as even only a few more measly hours of yet even its most minuscule employment, of even its most minimal compensation, would procure vital sustenance and afford for many days, even weeks plural, of my meager existence. I wasn't about to, however, listen to static for failing to have, by my third shift start, the sortation of 1,000 fucking items firmly in mi cabeza, and certainly not for $9 an hour. And so when Fatback gave me shit, implying my stupidity and the intellectual capacity that I lacked, rather than make her aware of the fact, to which she was obviously oblivious, or else remind her of it if she otherwise was aware, it just didn't care, that she appeared to be covered below her enormous midsection by but the mesh of a screen door, yet nonetheless, and what's more, saw nothing wrong or obscene or gruesomely or disgracefully or reprehensibly offensive about venturing into society so exposed, and unto the public's appalled dismay. Rather than cite these things unto similar reproach as that levied against me, I merely postulated this probably wasn't going to work out, and I forthwith quit and split. Still though, I'd be lying if, by that point, I said I wasn't already gone. I just can't perceive what they purpose to achieve. Their twisted treasure had but their scheme fulfilled its measure. If all they sought was my social security number and the rest of the details of my digital DNA, the sequential self assigned to me, then why with the luscious Latina wonder, hired when I was, and the only other new hire besides me, beyond maybe Friday, I guess that is, when she possibly might have provided but clever encouragement and better ensured that I should show up, at the very least, for Monday's crucial shift, when, with my first electronically recorded clock-in, thanks to the coat warehouse's mandatory direct deposit payment policy, their access onto my bank account should officially take immediate and irreversible effect, established via transaction to take place weeks later, when, for wages earned starting with Monday's first cementing minute, my first and ultimately my only paycheck would be directly deposited into my checking account, so disguising their dissemblance with viable veil. And if they only meant otherwise to merely drain me of my cocky testicles, deflate my testy-talky testes, respirate with helium my oxygenated objects, and so make narrow the vocal cords in my nuts, my manly members, my heavy he-halves, the descended bites which he had first already consumed before, while chewing, he was confronted of God in the garden, and Adam's apple became forevermore lodged in my throat of man, and which speech organs are housed in the scrotum to weigh downward, and so widen the passageway of air's articulation through male's throat, producing open, deeper rumble bass, juxtaposed with woman's lighter treble, tighter treble, softer than masculine voice of man. But so I say, to squeeze my privy pair of sound, reduce a squeak my mighty lion's roar, and pinch squeal to my manly speech against them. If so they conferred unto and via some staged context merely to castrate me my confidence, showcasing my affections coldly requited, then again, why deploy her coy beyond Friday, rather than instructing her instead toward utter indifference at my presence, and to display never amusement for my disposition, nor concede to my ever evince her laugh or smile, or under any circumstance portray my company amicable, but conjure too premise by which she should make me aware that she was at any rate single and unspoken for, yet notwithstanding would not be by any means charmed by me, and thus compel me to question my charisma and doubt my own immense, immeasurable, purely magnanimous merit. Why give me a chance to blow it on my own, through my own eyes surmise, and awkward spontaneity perchance bear blame, or allow my recurring stupidity to play once more my saboteur, and so miss opportunity to make me feel simply lacking, unworthy, lackluster, or less than. Inadequate, insufficient, inferior, deficient, neither good nor nearly enough, or anything but magnificent. Hard to figure. Insomuch, though, that its whole transpiration, my employment with the coat warehouse, occurred so close, and seemed just all too convenient chronologically, the position procured in just under, and then already abdicated in just over a week's time afterward, following my afternoon monologue soliloquy assault, in my own car alone, on the ears and hearts of all Hispanics that heard me, which number should be none, but it's not. Its timely timing, too, compounded by the blatant, obviously concocted, clearly in genuine context that they instigated, the synthetic, insincere circumstance, which, according to plan, provoked dynamic between Miss Latina and I, that it all seemed but strings of strangeness tied loosely together, which could not but give me pause thereafter unto potential implications, and linger looming in my analysis in the days that followed, before eventually dissipated from the daily foreground between not many days far hence and over weeks next. It had crossed my mind, though, originally and at the time, but for perplexity and a scarcity of alternative explanations, however absurd or grandiose or deranged or impossibly implausible that should otherwise seem, but for that it addressed also and incorporated all the weird points of data. But the thought had crossed my mind. I had taken it into consideration that perhaps they had hired me only to deliberately drive me away, that before long I would quit, yet still the next day I show up to work anyway, only it's not me, but the character double of me which they should mean to develop, like the multiple extra Oswalds that popped up prior to November. I don't think that's it, though. And really? You don't think that's it? Yet, valid sarcasm aside, which rejoinder requires no further point presented in objection, but its facetious tone suffices for counter-argument. Skepticism, though, an utter exodus from and complete abandonment of Occam's razor notwithstanding, I don't think they meant to lose me so soon, or expected that I'd so quickly quit me, or so willing forfeit me the job that I just recently and so desperately secured. The manager who hired me, La Naturalized Latina, and the prettier and more prominent of the two ogres to which, while employed with the coat warehouse, I was to answer, as she introduced Fatbat, her subsidiary, that is, her second in command, and not simply crass to the sad fact that regardless to whom she was compared, her designation always, in description between men, is the ugly or the uglier one. But first thing Monday morning, as she introduced Fatbat to me and the hot young Hispanic, their cohort, who they hired alongside me, our new boss, directing us with any questions that we might have during our shifts unto Fatbat, who will be happy to help, made mention that Fatbat for many years had been her Monday through Friday anchor of the morning shift. But she specifically referenced Fatbat's reliable longevity. And I remember the metaphor distinctly, for as much as, while true, she may appear about as dense as a blown-up beach ball, she's actually about as buoyant as a wheelbarrow full of bricks, with metal prices also being what they are, and gas too. And why waste fuel on water generating reverse thrust if it takes stepladders, buckets, hoses, bristled scrubbers on long-handled broomsticks, a team of laborers, and a trip to the shed aquarium, all just to bathe Fatbat anyway, and as also she has few other easily discernible functions or applications, except, of course, as the picture on the poster of perhaps the most successful pro-choice campaign imaginable, or similarly, splitting video screen with some heinous ombre equivalent in, again, presumably, about the most effective anti-alcoholism advertisement that might be shown to teenagers, adolescents, and all young adults alike. The pair first, filmed from afar, and in grainy surveillance camera-like footage for effect, like these are dangerous subjects and wanton threats for which one ought be on the lookout. Their waddling set in slow motion as begins the menacing voiceover. John and Jane thought alcohol would help them be social. John and Jane thought alcohol was harmless. John and Jane thought alcohol wouldn't impair their judgment. Until John and Jane, zooming in on the two just as stern, heavy music reinforces horror, woke up next to Juan and Juanita! Then slow motion a moment more. John and Jane were wrong. Always avoid aliens and alcohol. And watch awareness, advocacy, and membership among the quadruple A all skyrocket. Except only those two plausible alternatives, though. And as her baths are exasperating as currently they're administered, you could drop and drag Fatbat by line behind a ship and watch her cease the speeding strength of ocean liners unto still stop upon the water's surface.